Hello, Los Angeles. It is such a pleasure to be moderating this afternoon session on revenue, how to build and expand your brand beyond the pitch. Um, my name is Alana Glass, and I am a freelance journalist with Forbes Sports Money, where I often write on the intersection of women in sports and business. And I am just so honored to moderate this panel with front office executives with Angel City Football Club. Angel FC is going to be the latest and greatest professional sports team in Los Angeles. It is the first women's professional soccer team in LA since 2010 and is the first LA team in the National Women's Soccer League history. So let me just tell you about LAFC before we jump in with Heather and Katie. At LAFC, or excuse me, Angel City FC, gosh, that's the sibling organization, Angel City FC. Sorry about that, ladies. Angel City FC thinks differently about football. It's not just a game. They're building an organization where mission and capital can coexist. They stand for equality and impact, and they want to make an impact in the community where they are champions on and off the field. So this afternoon, we have Katie Eaton, who is the Vice President of Commerce and Fan Experience. And we also have Heather Pease, who is the Senior Director of Ticketing Strategy. So Heather, first, I would love it if you can introduce yourself to the audience and also tell them your superpower.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alana, and very happy to be here. Not the first time that people have called us LAFC, but absolutely not who we are. So as Alana mentioned, I'm with Angel City. I oversee ticketing strategy. And essentially my background has been primarily, on the team side of sports, building relationships with fans, getting them to, engage with our brand, working with them on, what an experience should be for a certain club, what it means to the individual market, what it means for the demographic of our fan to be, partners in, whether that's been in the NBA, Major League Soccer, women's soccer. And, eventually at the end of the day, of course, that also equals generating revenue in the form of ticket sales. So some of those folks come to every single game that we have, and some just come once, but they're all very important. And so it's my job to cater to just a wide variety of fans when it comes to the team and brand side. Not surprisingly, I think my superpower is relationship building, which I will admit has been a struggle for me during the pandemic. I love being in a room with folks, whether that's people that I work with, potential clients, sponsors. There's just something lost in Zoom where it gets, I would say, very business focused very quickly. And being somebody that, I would say is empathetic and cares about folks, I really miss the, like, Katie, how was your day? What did you do over the weekend? And sometimes right now we're just like, great, here's our agenda, let's go. So I'm looking forward to, as we start to slightly reopen from the pandemic, having more of those opportunities.
And Katie, please give the audience your background and what is your superpower?
Sure. Like Heather, actually funny, we have never met. So I love what Heather said. I would love to be able to be in person and have that conversation with her. My background is really in the product space. So I've been across corporate, startup, and sports. Prior to joining Angel City, I was with Major League Soccer in the consumer products business. So really helping bring that physical product that represents the ultimate fandom that you wear as like a walking billboard to scream your passion for your team, helping to bring those products to life. And then with Angel City, expanding that beyond just being a soccer fan, but how are we building a brand that represents our values, but also becomes a lifestyle brand that people want to wear in LA, in our country, and around the globe.
Awesome.
So my superpower is figuring out how to get stuff done, which is very relevant right now in our supply chain issues. Anyone who works in the retail product space and constantly trying to, how are we making sure we have product for holiday? How are we getting our jerseys for next year? and all of that. So I'm really good at finding solutions, I would say, is my superpower.
Right. And speaking of getting things done, Julie Ehrman, who is the co-founder and president, wanted to be with us today, but had an emergency to handle. But between Julie and the other co-investors in this franchise, they really got it done. And they had the vision, and the team will be on the pitch in 2022. Heather, can you give the audience just a little bit of background on the history of how it all started and where we are and how we got to where we are today?
Definitely. So a handful of years ago, there was this convergence of a few different groups. Natalie Portman with one of her nonprofits with Time's Up, listened to a speech by Abby Wambach, who's a former women's national player. And all of these conversations were converging around, where women stood in, business, and where what Abby was speaking about mainly was, what it meant for her walking off of the stage of the ESPYs, having won the Lifetime Achievement Award alongside Peyton Manning and Kobe Bryant. And, she was saying, like, I was walking into a very different reality than they were. I was walking into, how do I hustle? How do I make money? And they were walking into retirement, with banks loaded. So Natalie heard the story and was like, man, I really didn't realize that there was that like inequity in sports also. And they just started a dialogue alongside the women's national team asking for, equal pay, which was a big discussion. If you guys haven't heard about that, there's also a great documentary on it. And so they just kind of kept the dialogue going. And then eventually, Natalie was like, should we just start a team? And is this the best way to make an impact, is to invest in the sport itself? Obviously, the women's national team is incredibly, has incredible accolades across the globe, from World Cups and Olympics. And if this team can't even get paid the same amount as the men's national team, or this league isn't surviving as well as the men's league, is the best way to invest and make change to actually just start a team. And so between Natalie Portman, Julie Ehrman, who you mentioned, and who's our co-founder and president, and then Karen Nortman, who's a childhood friend of Julie's, but is a badass VC venture capitalist, they just came together to say, like, I think this is, the best way to go about it. So they rallied between their friends, investor collaborators, and then also a lot of the former women's national team players to come together to make this incredible conglomerate of, I think we have, upwards of 50 to 100 investors now who really support this mission. And to your point, came together so quickly. Like, it was a very easy hand raise that some people talk about, like, I didn't even know the details. And I was like, yes, let me in, I'll invest. And here we are starting, a team in 2022, and Natalie's quoted as saying this a lot of times, but like, in the best city in the world, with the best sports teams in the world, and, putting women's soccer at that forefront also.
That's awesome. So speaking of badass investors, one of your investors is the legend, Billie Jean King. And I remember in 2015, it was right after the US women's national team won the World Cup in Canada. And she was giving a talk, and she was discussing that for women in sports, it's not an every 4 years situation. It's not that women play soccer every 4 years and then nothing happens in between, but it's every day. And she was really highlighting the importance of investing in women in sports, specifically soccer, investing in it every day. And so I know that at Angel City, you have 3 pillars to your revenue model, which looks like sponsorship, merchandising, and ticket sales. Talk to me a little bit briefly about the uniqueness of the sponsorship model. I understand that about 10% of every sponsorship goes directly to the community. Katie or Heather, can you just briefly tell the audience about some of those highlights of the sponsorship model?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. And it was one of the first, I would say, tangible aspects of what we said we were going to do. So we said we were going to be about, equity. We said we were going to, be game changers on and off the field, set a new expectation. And with that, when we started to have conversations around our revenue models, it was, how do we look at this differently? We have people that have come from, sports backgrounds like Katie and myself. We have people in the front office that, come from tech, that come from media. And so it was really an opportunity to reframe, well, this is what's done in sports. This is how things are structured. You sell sponsorships and, maybe at the end of the day, you have a foundation or a community department. And, we just started from the top and said, what if we just start differently? And so we made a commitment that 10% of every sponsorship would go back, whether that's, financially or, with product, would go back to impact the community. So we have a number of partners that, have chosen, their lanes. So Nike being a great example, we learned that a big reason that, girls and young women were dropping out of sports is they didn't have access to a sports bra. So, I think people often think about equipment challenges, but soccer is one of the most accessible sports in the world, which is why it's the largest sport. So the fact that we had girls, and this is across the globe, but, specifically in LA County, that were dropping out because they didn't have a sports bra, it's like, well, this is something that we can solve. So, with our Give Back program, we're giving out, 22,000 sports bras, a little bit into the ticketing component here, but it follows that same model of 10% of every sponsorship going back to the community. And whether that's, because of food insecurity or building gardens, with every sponsor, we've worked to take a stance of what can we do locally to give money back and give product back to the community, which is just, it's atypical to start at that place. It's one thing to say, oh, now we have money, let's then put it back into the community. But to start here, as a new organization, as a startup, has been, just leading a different path in sports.
That's awesome. And, community pride is so important. And so many communities take pride in their teams. They take pride in the colors. And Katie, let's talk to me a little bit about the merchandising. I love that asphalt, that Sol Rosa color that you have going on in the crest. Let's talk a little bit about merchandising. And, I've been told that when it comes to merchandising, you're also looking at lifestyle in your merchandising. And so, the team hasn't even been on the pitch yet, but the merchandise is fabulous. Fans are wearing it. Tell us about merchandising and what's been going on so far.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was very fortunate that our creative director, Almadea, designed the crest so beautifully that made it, and with lots of options that made it really, really fun for the merch space. So she made it very easy for us. I think for us, the way that we approach it, we are a brand. And so I think in a lot of sports teams, it becomes that almost you're wearing your sign or your billboard, and we will have that stuff, but it's also making sure that it's a very clean, you want to wear this all the time. I want to wear this to go out in as well. And I think it's also a logo tee in sports is going to be outside of your jersey, your number one seller. But how we're positioning and putting it out there is we're going to style that logo tee over a collared dress with Sol Rosa Air Force Ones. So in a lot of the ways that we're positioning the product, but I think then also making sure that we have price points across the board that are accessible to everyone, and how we're marketing it. We're not just looking at LA, we 100% want to make sure we have everything for our fan base, but we also are targeting nationally and globally. So we've actually sold product from our website in 49 states. If you know anyone in Alaska, tell them to buy Angel City product so we can get to 50. And then also in over 30 countries across 6 continents. So I think we are trying to really build that global brand, and all the stuff that Heather just mentioned that we're doing on sponsorship, and the whole reason we started the club, it's how can we get, merch is the most way to get visible. A lot of times it is walking billboards. So how can we get people to see Angel City product and be oh, that's really interesting, and they want to dive in to everything else that we're doing.
All right, come on, Alaska. Someone on this.
Anyone on here from Alaska, I will give you a promo code. Let us get to 50 states.
Let's do it. Let's get the team to 50. Katie, what type of digital tools are you using to push out and promote merchandising, and what has been most successful for you?
I think social is huge. I think as we are a brand new team, so email is starting to become just as big, if not, we know it's like a major channel for both ticketing and merch. But you have to have that database first. So starting really heavy with social. And then obviously we have amazing investors. That's something very nice to have access to these amazing women that have huge followings. So they've been great at supporting us to, wear merch, things like that. I think the content and how we're styling it, trying different stuff, like we just did with Kristen Press, our new player, like how she styles different looks on TikToks. So I think social has been absolutely really huge for us, and we're seeing email grow even more. I think also PR and going after non-traditional PR. So like when we did our crest launch, it was very much about getting in complex and some of those like lifestyle, so that we're really positioning ourselves as a lifestyle brand as well as a soccer team.
Awesome. Okay, so we've covered sponsorship. We've spoken a little bit about merchandising. Let's talk about ticketing. You want fans in the seats. You want those season tickets sold. Heather, what has the ticket sales experience been like so far, and what sorts of strategies are you using to make sure that Bank of California Stadium is full in 2022?
Great question. I think there were some people who thought that Angel City would, be announced and we would sell Bank of California out in day one. Having been in ticket sales for 15 years, that's not how it works. So it really has to be, a thoughtful, strategy in terms of fan acquisition. Katie mentioned, data capture, which obviously is massive. So it really is across the board. I mean, we want to be, a place for anybody to come. So one, there's communication with, obviously the low hanging fruit, I would say, of like people who follow the women's national team, like, youth soccer clubs. Of course, we're going after all those people. But, I look at, the things that we think are small, but that are massive impacts in terms of what will drive revenue at the end of the day is, our pricing and benefits. We priced very equitably across NWSL. Like, we know we're going to put a great product on the field, but we didn't want, to say, well, we're LA and we're going to outprice the market. And so we wanted to be fan friendly. We know that not everyone has disposable income. So we're not ever going to say, like, we have a ticket for every single person. Like, people don't have entertainment budgets, and we understand that. But for those who, have an entertainment budget, whether that's small or large, we want to make sure that our prices are accessible while putting on an incredible product in an amazing stadium. So we're not talking numbers publicly yet, but we've had incredible response from the market. Our deposits to get in, were as low as $50. So again, it was a low entry point. And then our average season ticket, was between $400 and $500. And, that's for 12 games. So that's not to devalue what we're doing. It's to make sure that, people can access our product. And so again, that's just thoughtful strategy to different types of communities, different areas of Los Angeles. And, we're really excited about the mission component of it as well, which, I heard from, we just, over the weekend and the beginning of this week, had, an in-person seat selection event over the course of 3 days for some of our premium seat deposit holders to, come down and select their season tickets for next year, or I should say really the next 3 to 5 to 7 years, because they're on multi-year contracts. And the number of people that I talked to when I said, what made you interested in Angel City season tickets, the number of people that said, when you guys announced, there was just at the core of the brand, there was this community impact piece. And, maybe the story was that they grew up and didn't have, somebody to look up to from a professional, sports perspective, or maybe it's that they, said, you guys are just doing this differently. And I appreciate that. Like, I know that my money is going somewhere that is, again, making an impact in the community. There were so many amazing stories from fans that I really think that cohesively, when I think about our Kristen Press signing, when I think about our crest and colors, we're very thoughtful in how we show up on social media. And then, of course, again, at the end of the day, all of our branding, all of this, we want to tie this back to revenue drivers, but that's not the thing that leads it. I'm never saying like, hey, we need, marketing email to go out because I need to, it's like, what's the purpose behind this? Let's be thoughtful. How are we communicating this? Like, of course, Katie and I are held to revenue goals at the end of the day, but this is so much bigger than a ticket revenue goal, right? Like the impact that we're making on the community, again, the sports bra donation piece that I referenced it's so much larger than, what we can sit in the front office and talk about and look at numbers. What we're doing and creating a pathway for young girls and then also resetting the standards in women's sports, I think really, really resonates with a lot of fans. And therefore, then they're converting into season tickets because it's a product that they believe in and that they trust.
Right, absolutely.
I was just going to elaborate on that and say, I mean, it's the same with products. Like we're starting to implement some of that same like 10% sponsor model where there's give back on different product categories and collections that we're doing. And you'll see a lot more of that to come, but also people are buying it and you'll see they're posting it and they're excited about Angel City. And it's not about, I mean, like this was before we even like announced Chris and Prez or anything, but it was because of what we stand for. And it represents where it's like, I feel great wearing this because it represents what I stand for too.
Right. And speaking of wearing something, we have a question from the audience, Katie, and an audience member wants to know, will we see sports bras as a merchandise category on the site?
I love that question. Yes, actually, there will be a sports bra on the site very soon as it can get delivered during our supply chain issues, but it's on its way. I would say it should probably be on the site within like the next month. We'll have it definitely before holiday.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's coming before the holidays, so that's great to know. You mentioned Kristen Press, and for audience members, Kristen Press is the first player signed to Angel City FC. Kristen is a well-known forward with the U.S. Women's National Team, and she is a Los Angeles native. And so the team is excited to have her back in Los Angeles playing. And based off of that, one of our questions from the audience is, how will you encourage kids, the future Kristen Presses of the world, to play soccer and be fans? Any thoughts that you can tell the audience about that?
Heather, you have a great story.
Yeah, I can take that one, and I'll tell one anecdotal story from, again, these events that we just hosted, and then I'll talk about just very briefly some things that we're actually doing, right now in the community. But so Julie Ehrman, our co-founder and president, was at these, seat selection events this weekend, and she told a story about how when people were lined up outside the building, we had our first time slot for people to select seats was 10 a.m. And we had people there at 6:30, with donuts and coffee waiting to get in to select their seats. And so Julie was going up and down the line, just saying hi to folks. And there was one girl, it was like 6 or 7, and it's great because we actually have this on video, but Julie asked her, like, so who do you want to see on the field? Who do you want to see for Angel City? Totally expecting, okay, Alex Morgan, Tobin Heath, like some of the big name players. And the little girl like waits. And then she's like, me. Oh. And I think and when Julie was sharing the story with the rest of the fans at the event, I mean, completely choked up. Like, it means so much to hear that. So like, one, existing is important. 2, having representation in the front office. So this isn't, don't quote me on this number, but we are like 95% female. 1, in terms of, obviously our investment group, but 2, in terms of our executive team and our staff. So again, like representation both on the field, having a team, but then also having this on the business side. And then we also do in the market, in the community, we have community clinics that are free. We'll partner with organizations to do like tech ball tournaments. And then eventually at some point down the line, we'll have camps and clinics as well. So, I think that there are a lot of things that, we do tangibly, but then also, we just see this inherent, I mean, there were people at these events this weekend, of men walking in, with a girl dad t-shirt. And there's just, having the opportunity to come see a women's sport is just different. It's not a knock on Major League Soccer. It's just different when you can envision yourself on the field one day.
I think if you both Heather and I played soccer growing up, and everyone, if you grew up in our generation, the 99ers and that moment when they won. And so it's making that for the next generation. That's where we get to be a part of building it. And now we get to work with those amazing women that played on that team as our investors.
And I would say from the brand building side of things, we're very thoughtful on the content side. We're very strategic, with our database and how we manage that. And that's, we can talk about this from a sports team, but obviously that spans any organization. of, I look at other organizations, like they just send out a static post or it's one email and there's grammatical errors. Like I know that that's 101, but those things are so important when it comes to, again, what we have seen of people feeling really good and trusting our brand, is ensuring that we're very buttoned up when it comes to what is presented in the marketplace.
Right. And speaking of what you're presenting in the marketplace, you shared with me earlier that the Kristen Press signing was about energy and excitement and having that on the pitch. And one of the audience members wants to know, what do you want the vibe to be in 2022? So what can fans anticipate and expect next year?
Katie, do you want me to take that? You got it.
I mean, I think a sellout, I would assume, like we want to say, and making sure, but I think it's that energy in that moment of, especially for like us, that like we've been building up to this moment like for a very long time, to see it come to life and play, but to have those little girls in the audience that see those players that they can play, or just, I think any woman who has dealt with anything to be like, oh, you can change the game, like you can, but also just create an amazing on-field experience, and to win, I would say. I want to say that.
So when we hired our sporting director, one of the things that, Julie and our board aligned on with her, was like, we want to be fast on, this is on the field, right? So like, we want to be fast paced. We want to score a lot of goals. And I was so happy to hear that, because like, even though I played soccer my whole life, I didn't think about that being part of like the hiring conversation of like, what is your strategy going to be on the field? But it was this, and any of you who have seen Julie speak, and again, unfortunately she couldn't be here, but like such high energy, such get it done mentality. We're going to, break, she keeps with everything. It's like, we're the first to do this. We're going to be the first out of the gate with this. We're going to, and taking that like business energy and mentality and then applying that to the on-field, I'm really happy, because again, we talk about, how important it is for brand consistency. If we're kicking back and we're a really defensive team, it might not exactly be reflective of like the LA market, the excitement that we have. So it was really interesting, purely from I would say like a fan standpoint, but like that was aligned upon in our sporting director hire, who then has hired our head coach. So very energetic. And then as Katie said, like the building, our goal obviously is to sell out. So it should be pretty rocking next year. 22,000 folks in 2022.
Yes, I think that's fantastic. Well, I think we've got our warning. Maybe we have like 30 seconds at this point. So I'll just leave it for each of you to just give one parting piece of advice or nugget for anyone listening who's out there trying to build a business, build a brand. What advice would you offer someone here listening in the audience?
I will say, I used to be small, but I technically still am a small business owner. That's how I got connected with Angel City, as I was consulting for them. I would say to take calculated risk and to just keep going, like just keep trying. Don't give up, because it will work out. As someone who had a small business during COVID, definitely hit some moments, but stuck with it, and it will work out.
Amazing. And I would just say, if you have a passion point, just follow that. That is what has gotten me to this point in my career. I'm not a small business, but from a personal career perspective, like I would not be doing the work that I'm doing today if it was just about, chasing something that somebody else wanted to do. That's what brought me to Angel City, again, was that community impact, and the great people I got to work with.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Eric is back on the screen. So that means our time is done. I appreciate the invitation. I'm inspired. I hope everyone else is. And can't wait to see what happens in 2022 with Angel City FC.